Hey everybody, welcome back to Coach All Writes. In today's video, we're going to be going over some reminders for the upcoming AP Lang exam. Before we dive in, please make sure that you are following here on YouTube with those notifications turned on. I'll be going live in the days leading up to the exam, answering student questions, and I would love to see you there. Let's start by talking about the test format. So the test is going to be May 9th, 2023. It's going to start at 8 a.m. for your time zone. Remember that you're not allowed to use your cell phone during the test. I feel like that's kind of a no-brainer for standardized tests, but it's worth mentioning. When the test starts, they're going to tell you some what I call intro material. They're going to give you reminders like don't talk about the test and things like that. Now, the first official section of the test is going to be the multiple choice section or the MCQ. You're going to have 1 hour to answer 45 questions. Then you get a 10-minute break. And then you have the FRQ section, which is the essays. For this section, you'll have 2 hours and 15 minutes. They're going to tell you this in the AP exam, but just as a reminder, please do not talk about the test. You cannot talk about the multiple choice ever, and you cannot talk about the FRQ prompts until after they've been publicly released. They typically release the US prompts 2 days after the test. Now let's talk about what to bring on test day. It's possible that your teacher or your school district might provide some of these items for you, but if not, if you're taking the paper test, you're going to want to make sure that you have number 2 pencils for the multiple choice. Please use regular pencils and not mechanical pencils. You're also going to want blue or black ink pens. Make sure that they're the kind of pens that don't smudge or bleed or anything like that. You're going to use the pens on the essays. And it really doesn't matter whether you use blue ink or black ink because when they scan the essays in, it becomes black ink anyway. Now, if you happen to be taking the digital test, you're going to want to make sure that you have your device and your charger. Again, some of these things might be provided by your teacher or your school district, but it's good to know what you need just in case. It's also possible that you might want or need a snack for that 10-minute break that I was talking about before. Some schools provide a snack, others don't. So just double check with your teacher and also please be conscientious of other people's allergies. Something else that you might want to bring on test day is a watch. Now, it cannot be a smartwatch, so no Fitbits, no Apple Watches. However, it can be a basic digital watch. A lot of my students like to go get one at Walmart. They're between $5 and $10. They usually buy the little kid watches because those are cheaper. And we usually get a good laugh about seeing who gets which one, whether it's Spider-Man or Sonic or LOL dolls. If you're taking multiple AP exams, you should definitely consider a watch because you're going to want to use it for your other exams as well. Now, technically, there is supposed to be a clock in your testing room. However, you might not be able to see the clock very clearly from where you're sitting, or in some cases, you might not be able to read the clock very well. So it can be better to have your own watch instead. Some other reminders, make sure that you set your alarms the night before. And I said alarms because I'm the type of person who likes to set more than one. Make sure that you also pack your bag the night before. So if you're bringing pencils, pens, a snack, a watch, make sure that they're already packed in your bag. Now, if you happen to be taking the digital test and you need to bring a device for whatever reason, make sure that your device is already fully charged. I recommend wearing comfy clothes on test day because technically you're going to be sitting there for over 3 hours. You might as well be comfortable. It's also important to know your testing location and to arrive early. It's possible that you might be testing in a different classroom than you're used to or a different part of your school than what you're used to going to. So make sure you know where you have to report on test day. I recommend arriving early because anything can happen. You don't want to be the person who tries to show up at 8:05 for an 8 o'clock test. Here are some general exam reminders. Play to your strengths. Also, answer each question. This goes for both the MCQ and the FRQ. For the multiple choice, try to use process of elimination. And if you need to, if you are running out of time, do what I call straight line bubbling. So on the paper test, that means that you just pick a letter and you bubble in that letter for all remaining answers. If you have a bit of time and you can change 1 or 2 and actually try on those, then great. But make sure you at least give yourself a chance of getting it right. Answer each question. Now, for the digital exam, straight line bubbling is a little bit harder. My students are taking the paper test, but they took the digital ACT about a month ago. And this whole straight line bubble concept was way harder on the computer because it involved a lot of clicking. In that sense, I would say as you are going through the questions, instead of just bookmarking them and coming back to them, try to at least answer it and then bookmark it. That way, you at least know that there's an answer there in case you don't have time to go back to it. Now, for the FRQs, we want you to aim for, at minimum, an intro and 2 body paragraphs. You can write a third body paragraph if you want to and you have time. You can write a conclusion if you want to and you have time. Worst case scenario, just write a thesis in 1 body paragraph. You can at least get some points that way. Technically, you can get at least a 1-2-0 if you have a thesis and then a body paragraph that has evidence and commentary. Please do not leave essays blank. Also, I recommend using all your time on the FRQs. 2 hours and 15 minutes might not seem like long enough, but you want to make sure that you're using all that time. It is one of my biggest pet peeves as an AP Lang teacher to see students have extra time on their essays where they're just sitting there. Because during that time, you could be proofreading, you could be adding more content. So please use all your time for the FRQs. Now, for the multiple choice, some students use the full hour, but if you're a good test taker and you're confident in your answers and it only took you 50 of the 60 minutes, personally, I'm okay with you sitting there because I have seen some students start to overthink the questions if they finished early. So make sure that you know your own test taking strategies and abilities. But with the essays, in my opinion, there's always more you could say, especially if you have like 10 minutes left. Keep writing. Now let's talk about the multiple choice questions. I have a video that was recently published on my channel all about AP Lang MCQ tips. It's an updated version of some of my previous videos, and I would love it if you would check out that video for more thorough tips. I'll leave a link to that in the description box below, but here are some basic reminders. Number 1, identify the key words in the question. You need to know the question you're being asked. It's important to go back to the passage. Many of the questions have an answer that is explicitly stated somewhere in the passage, so go back to the passage to find the answer. Don't just pick an answer based on your memory or what you think the passage said. Remember that in many cases, you're going to need to read the surrounding sentences for context clues. Also, you want to eliminate distracting answers. So if the answer is partially right but not totally right, it's wrong. Don't try to justify it. Don't try to think that you somehow misread the passage. Also, sometimes the answer choice might be distracting because it's not actually answering the question being asked. It might be true, but it might not be the answer to that question. These can be tempting answers to choose as well, so don't fall for that trap. Now let's go over some quick synthesis tips. First and foremost, remember for synthesis that you need to cite 3 sources. 3 different sources. It's okay to cite the same source more than once. However, it still counts as one source. As you are reading and annotating the sources, look for facts, statistics, real-world examples, and expert testimony because these tend to be logical evidence so they can strengthen your argument. If you are encountering a visual text kind of early on in the packet and it doesn't make sense, it's okay to skip it and come back to it. Sometimes if the visual text is a chart or a photo and it's one of the first couple sources, sometimes it doesn't make sense and you might not know how to use it. You might not know what it's showing or how it's adding to the conversation. If that's the case, just go ahead and keep reading the other sources and then come back to it. After having read the other sources, you might have a better idea of how that particular source fits into the conversation. As you're reading, determine how the sources relate to each other. This can help you figure out how to create this conversation of sources. It can also help you figure out which sources might work together well in a paragraph. Before you start writing, have a tentative thesis and main ideas. This will help you have a plan so you can stay focused and you can actually write your essay more quickly with some kind of mini outline. Sometimes when students just try to free write, they get going pretty well, but then they get to a point where they get stuck. Or they might realize that what they were saying isn't the argument that they actually want to make. That's why it's good to have your thesis and main ideas planned out in advance. I would also decide which evidence best proves your thesis. That way you can ensure that you are in fact using 3 sources or more within your essay. Remember, it's not like APUSH. You don't get bonus points if you use all the sources. So don't try to just cram them all in there just because. As you are reading, look for short quotes. And for your commentary, remember that commentary explains the significance of the evidence. It tells what it shows. We want to use a stronger word than shows, but you get the idea. So ask yourself why, how, so what. Why does this matter? What is the social impact or societal impact? How is this going to impact society in the short term or the long term? Do I, as a student, have any relevant personal experience? Some of the recent synthesis prompts have been education related. You can include personal experience if it's relevant and meaningful in your commentary. It's also important to remember to use words like because, since, or in order to. And also to help your line of reasoning, make sure that you have transition words. You can include transition words within your body paragraph, words like consequently, furthermore, and therefore. You can also use your topic sentences as a way to strengthen your line of reasoning as well and to create those strong transitions. For more information about how to do that, check out my recent video about argument and synthesis sentence frames. I'll leave a link to it in the description box below as well. For rhetorical analysis, make sure that you identify the rhetorical situation in the prompt. As you're annotating, look for the what and why. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? It can be helpful to divide the passage into sections. Think beginning, middle, end, or first half, second half. This is going to help you follow the speaker's line of reasoning. And if you do that in your essay, it helps your line of reasoning as well. For your thesis, make sure that you include at least 2 rhetorical choices and a reference to the specific message, argument, or purpose. As you are annotating, look for short quotes that you might be able to include. Within the quotes that you choose, analyze specific word choice or details, as this can elevate your score. So ask yourself, okay, why are they including this detail? What's the effect on the audience? How does it help them achieve their purpose? Or why are they including this specific word or phrase? How is that helping them convey their message or achieve their purpose? What's the effect of that word on the audience? Be sure to connect the rhetorical choice that you are analyzing to the rhetorical situation. I have several videos that cover this, including a video about how to write a rhetorical analysis paragraph and a video about my best rhetorical analysis tip. So if you want more info on this, definitely check out those videos. The key, though, is to ask yourself, why does the speaker make this choice for this audience on this occasion? If you're looking for more sentence frames, I have a recent video on that as well. And one quick tip about conclusions, because no, they're not mandatory, but yes, you might want to write one anyway. You can think about the historical significance of the passage, and you can also possibly analyze how the message is relevant today. That's a way to kind of broaden your analysis at the end, as opposed to just restating all your points again. Now, for the argument essay. I personally think this one is the hardest of the 3 essays, but you might like it the best. When you're writing an argument essay, you're likely going to see a quote in the prompt. You do not need to restate the quote or reference the person who said it. Quite frankly, that just kind of wastes your time anyway. You do, however, want to identify the topic that you're being asked to assert a position about. That's what they want you to write about. As with the previous 2 essays, it's important to plan before you write. I think it can be helpful to ask yourself, why or when is this topic valuable, and why or when is this topic harmful? Asking yourself these questions can help you plan your reasons in advance, and it could get you thinking about the topic more broadly. You can also use an acronym like CHORES to help you plan different types of evidence. So CHORES stands for current events, history, outside knowledge, reading, experience, and science. There are other acronyms or mnemonics out there like CHELPS and ReHugo, so use whichever one you are familiar with. You do not need to include evidence from all the categories of chores, but it can be helpful to include evidence from a couple different categories. Make sure that you select the specific evidence that you can write about best and determine the best order of your evidence. Don't worry so much about choosing smart evidence, if you will. Make sure that it is evidence that you can write about well. You want to provide a couple sentences of context to tell us about that evidence, and then 3 to 5 sentences of commentary to tell us what that example reveals or shows. Like, why did you choose that example? What does it tell us about the topic? You also want to avoid hypotheticals, as these often come across as generalizations, not specific evidence. And yes, you can write about personal experience. I do have a video about this on my channel as well, in case you want some tips. Well, there you have it. Those are some quick reminders about the upcoming AP Lang exam. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your fellow AP Lang students. And also don't forget to make sure you are subscribed with your notifications turned on. That way you don't miss any upcoming live study sessions. Until next time, happy writing!